We've come to the Yom Kippur afternoon Haftarah, which is traditionally the story of the prophet Jonah. Jonah is perhaps our most familiar prophetic story. We've heard this since we were children, about the reluctant prophet who runs away and then gets swallowed up by a giant fish. This year, and by the way, if you want to actually read the text, it is in your prayer book. We are not going to read it directly. This year, in order to hear the message of Jonah's prophecy anew, we wanted to invite a poet to offer an interpretation on the themes of the story. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who wrote a book on the prophets, reminded us of the deep connection between poetry and prophecy. He said, "The prophet is a poet. What the poets know as poetic inspiration, the prophets just call divine inspiration. Divine revelation, What makes the difference between the prophet and the ordinary person is the possession of a heightened and unified awareness of certain aspects of life, above all, with a way of thinking imaginatively. Prophecy is the product of poetic imagination." We are thrilled to have acclaimed slam poet Phil Kaye share his poetry and his prophecy with us today. Phil is a Japanese Jewish American artist. His work has been featured in settings as diverse as The New Yorker and the MoMA. He's had millions of views online. He offered poetry to the Dalai Lama on the occasion of his 80th birthday, and he is a 2-time National College Poetry Slam winner. Phil also teaches weekly poetry workshops in a maximum security prison. You will see he's not only a gifted poet, but also a mensch. Poetry and prophecy, there is such a connection between them. For as Heschel said, in poetry, everything is possible. We're so grateful to have you with us today, Phil.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. And thank you all. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. I don't know if I've ever had poetry compared to prophecy. Those are very big shoes to fill. But I just have some words for you today. And as Rabbi said, my name's Phil Kaye, and I'm a poet. And I wrote a piece for today inspired by Jonah and the whale. And I was drawn to this story. For one, it was one of my all-time favorites as a kid growing up in Temple. Although admittedly, most of what I knew about Jonah and the whale as a kid boiled down to its title. I knew there was Jonah, there was a whale, Jonah gets eaten by the whale. I was like, I've heard enough. This is the greatest story I ever heard in Temple. This is basically Jewish Jaws. But as an adult, I keep looking back at it, and I'm drawn to several parts of the story, particularly what happens to Jonah before he finds himself in the belly of a whale or a big fish. And Jonah, of course, is told by God to go to Nineveh. And Jonah refuses. And he refuses because he sees the people of Nineveh as enemies, as other. And God says, no, they're with us, they're part of us. And Jonah disagrees. And this tension that the people of Nineveh find themselves in, of being half accepted, half in, half recognized, was something that resonated and I've been thinking about a lot. And so I wanted to share this poem that I wrote for today. It's an honor to get to share it with you all. My grandfather and I used to play hide and go seek when I was a kid. We played in the house, in the yard, and sometimes even during high holy days, when I was just old enough to see over the pews, my tiny legs swinging, bored, and my grandfather would lift up a prayer book over his eyes, his large face playfully peeking out from behind the pages, and he would say, "Here I am. I couldn't hide from you. You found me." Nearly 50 years earlier, my grandfather returns from World War II, and wants nothing more than to be a veterinarian. He applies to vet school, but gets rejected twice. Jewish quotas limiting the number of students like him to just 1%. His large face peeking out from behind the pages of his application. Here I am. I cannot hide from you. When my Japanese mother moves to America, she speaks English without a hint of a Japanese accent. A product of her time in international school, her years spent studying abroad. Everyone tells her, "You speak so well." Years later, I'm a child, and I move through the world with a protection I do not understand. My accentless English, my unoffending last name, my face, not traceable to any point on a map. A protection I do not understand until I give it up. I'm 12 years old, in middle school, and proudly announce to my classmates that I am Japanese and Jewish. They look at me and squint and smile, as if they suddenly understand something about me that I do not. "Oh, that's what you are," a boy says. He looks at me. "I see it. Your hair is kind of Asian. Your height is Jewish. The top half of your face is Asian and the bottom half Jewish." The other kids snicker. And I suddenly realize I had been hidden. And here, hidden was safe. In the years after, I begin the bittersweet realization of the sacrifice that went into that hiding. My grandfather, as a young man, finding time in between work shifts to go to the various county offices to change his last name to Kaye from Krenowitz. My mother's long hours practicing her R's and L's in English. Lover, really, rubber, lover, really, rubber. My great-grandparents, and the hidden prayer books, the secret attics, the packed bags for a country they had never stepped foot in before they called it home. And still, in the height of the pandemic, people with my mother's face get assaulted on the street. A temple, driving distance from where I grew up, wakes up, wrapped in police tape and bullet holes. I wear a mask across half of my face and try to remember what the boy in middle school told me. Is it that the top half of my face is Asian and the bottom half is Jewish, or the other way around? And which one might be better? I take a deep breath. Remember that I am hidden, and here, hidden means safe. But still, sometimes, I wander into a Japanese market and wish, even for a moment, for someone to mistake me for their nephew. Dream of walking into a new temple, to look different and not be seen as a novelty. Hope to say it. Here I am. I could not hide from you. I'm glad I did not have to. Thank you. You found me.